We're now joined by Nathan Giese. He covers Texas Tech men's basketball for the Lubbock Avalanche Journal, was covering a softball game from earlier today. Nathan, thanks for your time. Texas Tech's had big games back when Chris Beard was there and even through the transition. But what's it like in Lubbock right now for this game tonight with Houston?
It's kind of an interesting setup because, as you guys know, obviously Texas was considered the biggest rival for Texas Tech, and now they're not here. And last couple of years, when Texas comes, that's when the students line up and they camp out outside the USA. And they're trying to kind of get that going a little bit here with Houston. And if you just look at the ranking and this season's history, this should be that kind of game. It doesn't have quite the same reception as when Texas comes to town, but that's just something that's going to kind of come through time as that kind of rivalry builds. But they're out there, they're ready for this game, and yeah, like you said, they've had a couple of these top 10 matchups. This is the second ever in Lubbock, with Tech also being in the top 10. So it's a very interesting time for the Red Raiders to kind of have this game, especially this late in the season.
Last time every kind of obstacle that was thrown at them, they faced. They started down, Toppin out. McCastland, very rightfully so, got himself ejected in that one because he needed to send a message. And they overcame it. What this time? Because I doubt that those things are going to happen again.
They could happen again. You never know. But this one is interesting because we don't really know who's going to be available for Tech. Chance McMillan, one of the best three-point shooters in the country, the best one in the conference, missed Saturday's game. When we asked Grant about whether or not he would play at a certain point in the season, he said if it was the last game of the year, Chance would have played, but they have their eyes on further games. Now, whether that means that eyes on further games than being Houston or further games as in NCAA tournament, we're not really sure. And then Darian Williams, he got hurt in Saturday's game. He's dealt with that a couple times this year. They sat him the last 9.5 minutes or so. They were able to pull away, so not a problem there. Not the first time that's happened this year, too. Happened to get at home against Arizona. They just let him sit out, and they wound up winning by 16. So we're not really sure what the status of those guys is, but if you're going to win this game, you do need them. The first matchup, when you lose JT, you lose Grant, that's just one of those lightning in a bottle moments you can't predict. And I don't think you can try to replicate that, but you do have to come in with the same kind of intensity and aggressiveness that they had in that game. And that's the only way you can kind of contend with a Houston team like this.
What is what was the expectation for JT Toppin when he arrived, and what is he? Obviously he's winning awards every week inside the Big 12.
When he came here, it was very much the centerpiece of the transfer class. They had a good couple of guys that got it. They got Kevin Overton, Elijah Hawkins, guys like that to kind of solidify the backcourt. But what they really lacked last year, and that came up to bite them in the tournament against NC State, was a true post presence that you could kind of go to and give him that opportunity to control the ball in the paint. They didn't have that last year, and they brought it this year. And it's hard to say that he's exceeded expectation because there was a lot, but I think he has, just the way he's kind of been able to morph his own game. He's shown a lot more consistency in shooting jump shots and getting to the rim. On Saturday, the thing about JT is that when he's backing down, he's trying to get to his right shoulder. He's finished with his left because he's a left-handed guy. He finished with the right hand on Saturday. I don't think I've seen him do that all season. So he's still growing his game. And the way he's able to kind of dictate what the offense does is something that Texas Tech desperately needed this season, and he's done that in spades.
What do you think is the best matchup that they have going for them tonight?
Assuming they have everybody there, I like the matchup of McMillan and Williams, or that kind of variation against Cryer and Emmanuel Sharp. I think Tech's got a bit more of a size advantage in that area. The post is where it's going to kind of come down to, and that was kind of the most surprising thing of the win against Houston. Houston had a lot of foul trouble, and I know Jawan Roberts, he got hurt in that game. He was kind of iffy, but he was still very good in that game. You have to control the paint. You have to figure out ways to keep those guys off the glass, and you have to not crawl into a shell when they become physical with you throughout the game, because it's going to happen. You're going to get bodied. It's just the way Houston plays. You have to respond to that. So I like the perimeter aspect for Tech because they're a pretty perimeter-oriented team, but it's going to come down to how you control the paint, how you control the glass.
Yeah, Houston's going to they're going to bump and grind. Yeah, I think Tech had 2 players foul out. That doesn't include, of course, the ejection by Toppin early. But Houston had 4 players with 4 fouls when that game ended. That was an overtime game, so there's a little bit more time on the clock. I asked a writer, Chris Gardner, covers Houston among many others who cover the Cougars. How would you describe Texas Tech? How would you describe who they are, and then take Grant McCastland and describe him as a combination of a couple of like dogs?
The thing to know about Grant is that everybody says, he's won everywhere he's been, and that's obviously true. The thing I think people are kind of overlooking is that he's won with, not to disparage what he had, but much, much less talent. And the thing you could see last year's team overachieved incredibly. That team should not have been in a top 25 position it was for most of the year, but they just found ways to figure it out. And I think that's what this staff and Grant does specifically really well. So when you get that kind of mentality and that kind of ability to adjust and figure things out on the fly, and then you add legitimate talent that you can compare to other teams you're going, especially against the likes of Houston, the likes of Arizona. They were in that Texas A&M game without JT Toppin until the end. When you give a guy like that who's so good at the nuances of coaching and give him legitimate talent, that's what makes them dangerous right now.
Nathan, how do you compare this team with the team a few years ago, granted different coaching staff with Beard and all that made the Final Four run? This one seems like a team that, healthy altogether, could beat most anybody that they're matched up against.
I would agree with that. I think there's a couple of teams out there. I think Auburn's just going to be a terrible matchup for anybody because they're lengthy, they're athletic. I don't think Tech could really match up too well with them. But that's not to say they couldn't win that game too. That's kind of the thing with them, is that they've rarely had everybody totally healthy, and that's just kind of the nature of sports and everything. I don't think you can compare the two because they're so different, especially with the way basketball has changed now. Beard's teams were always so defensive-minded, and a lot of that defensive-mindedness came from drawing charges. Well, the charge call isn't really there anymore. You can still get it, but it's not as prominent as it was before. And when Grant came to Texas Tech from UNT, he realized, hey, I can't keep doing the same defense that Beard had, that Adams had, where he learned the defensive nuances and what made him successful in Denton. He had to adapt and figure things out. So they're a much more offensive-minded team where you can see the defense is getting better, but they're also tweaking the defense a little bit. And I think a lot of it is so they have the ability to play whatever style of defense you need in March, because you need different styles. They're doing a lot more switching now. Mixed results right now. They don't stick with it too much, but they're doing it. So I think they have it ready. So they're much more offensive than defensive-minded.
Well, we knew Grant for a long time. Of course, he's had the great run in coaching, as you mentioned, with what he did at the junior college level and before Tech at North Texas and elsewhere. He's a bulldog, man. Yeah, he is, and he's a brilliant basketball coach. What are some things about him that has surprised you, if anything?
I think you're kind of seeing him come out and embrace this the underdog, but also in the limelight. Like, and you're the underdog in a national aspect of everything, but you're in the limelight in Lubbock. And when you're kind of a star in Lubbock, it becomes kind of magnetized, and he's gravitating towards that a little bit. You can tell he's not totally comfortable with it, but he's allowing himself to kind of embrace it. You can see him, I think it was after the Arizona State game, he just went in and I think he tried to crowd surf with the students because he was so happy for getting that win and what they have there. He's still the same guy through and through, but you can see that he's becoming much more comfortable in this environment. And it's not an easy one to do because there's a lot of external pressure just in this very vicinity in Texas. And while it may not come nationally, right now they have the national spotlight, and you can see he's enjoying that as well.
Should be, because he's had great success, and this is a team that's just like any other team he's had before. And, of course, the win against Houston on the road, despite all the circumstances, was just phenomenal. Who must play better, Nathan? Who must be better? Obviously, there's about a week and a half left in the regular season, 2 weeks left in the Big 12. Who must step it up for them to have a chance? Or they might be able to make a run without him, but must get better the next couple of weeks.
It's Kevin Overton. He's the guy that when he came here from Drake, he played for Darian DeVries, who's now at West Virginia. He said, I didn't think I was being used the way I could totally be used. And there have been moments in this season, a lot of it has come when guys have been out and he's just been given the reins, said, hey, you have to go do this. He did that on Saturday with McMillan out. But what they really need, they need to be able to use their depth. They go about 3 guys deep off the bench right now. They kind of 7-guy rotation, give or take. And he just kind of been lost in that shuffle where the freshman Christian Anderson, they're playing him a lot more with Elijah Hawk. And so it's a 2-point guard set. Chance McMillan, when he's available, rarely comes off the floor. So there's not a lot of minutes for him there. But what he showed on Saturday, when he sticks his nose and his head down, gets to the rim, he's cutting to the basket, he's putting in the effort on defense. That elevates them to a different level where you can spell a chance for a little bit. You have these minutes available and you're not going to have a drop off because you just have a different dynamic. He has to take what he did against West Virginia, bottle it, and keep it going. If Tech has the ability to make a run to an Elite Eight, which I think they probably could, but they need everybody at the top of their game. He's at the top of that list.
You mentioned anytime they were playing Texas, when Chris Beard was there or when Chris Beard was in Austin, how people were lined up at that arena. And I saw the pictures. It was like a tent, and then there was 10, and then there was 20, and then there was a bunch. Has it been kind of like that since yesterday evening?
No, it started with, I think the first one might have set up shop a little after 6 or 7 on Saturday. I drove by yesterday. There was about 7 tents there. And just now, as kind of students are getting out of class, they're kind of posting up there. Definitely not the same level. But, I mean, again, as much as people like myself, like you guys know, this is a monster game. Mm-hmm. It doesn't resonate the same with students because it's Houston. You know, they're still new to the Big 12. So it's going to take a little bit to kind of generate that aspect. But even kind of starting with this game, if you can start getting some of that traction with the students, I think that's a good start.
We had one of our viewers, retired stockbroker, say Baylor and TCU have a natural rivalry, plus their private schools, etc. Do you think Texas Tech and Houston can be on a collision course to have any kind of a rivalry? Not that makes up for Texas, but this could end up being something across the board where they're both very much right against each other.
I think the hope would be that they could, but it's really hard to just kind of materialize a rivalry like that. I think a lot of people kind of look at, especially in football sense, Oklahoma State is Tech's biggest rival. And maybe it's there, maybe it is. I think people consider Baylor to kind of be that when you have the Scott Drew and Grant connection, and there was that whole, if Scott Drew leaves, maybe Grant's going to go there. So that a little bit there. I would like to see a rivalry kind of just pop up like this, but a lot of it comes down to comparable success, whereas Houston has that success right now. Tech is trying to build up to that consistent success, and they got the one win, but if they lose tonight, there will be 1-4 against them in the last 2 years. So it's something that could happen. I don't see it yet, but I would like to see one team kind of stand out like, all right, that's the team that we get amped up for around here.
So please tell me your nickname is Goose.
I've had so many nicknames, but yes, that is some variation of Geese. Big Bird was a big one for a little while there. But yes, when you get the last name Geese, everybody just calls you either Geese or Goose. And I had teachers that didn't know what my first name was; they just knew me as Geese. So,
well, good stuff, man. Nathan, thanks for joining us, and have fun tonight watching, covering the game. We appreciate your time.
All right, thanks for having me, guys.
Nathan Giese with the Lubbock Avalanche Journal.